The Third Side of the Coin, brought to you by Excalibur Coaching and Consulting.
Okay. Hello, and welcome to the Third Side of the Coin podcast, episode 2, Enhancing Creativity to Live a Fulfilling Life. My name is Alex Aberle, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Tim Wong. And just very briefly, just in case somebody did not get a chance to hear our first podcast and don't know who we are, I am the president of Excalibur Coaching and Consulting, a leadership and career coaching firm that partners with current and aspiring leaders going through a career transition and looking to find ways to build a world of better leadership. My co-host Tim is a content curator focusing on thought leadership for YPO and defining learning themes for programming globally relevant top leadership learning events. He is also an international faculty of the Art of Living Foundation and the International Association of Human Values, teaching courses since 2003 on consciousness and meditation, specializing in the corporate leadership workshops. I wanted to start by saying that in the first episode, we've talked a little bit about the importance of engaging creativity when dealing with difficult predicaments presented to the professionals during the pandemic. We both really know that in general, and regardless of the events that happen throughout the world and led us to where we are, whether it's new learnings or perhaps even losses, we need to start thinking innovatively and creatively. So let's first clarify what the purpose is of the creative thinking and how it can benefit people to thrive in life. And I really wanted to bring up the question from one of our viewers, a good friend of mine, Brian, who is an art teacher. He wanted to know, Tim, specifically hear you addressing of, is creativity something you're born with?
Creativity is our essence. It's our very being. Every one of us, we express ourselves differently. We dress differently. We walk differently. We eat differently. So that already the basis of life is about creativity. So I think we are creative, all of us. It just depends on the circumstances of how we express it.
So if we're utilizing the understanding that it is our essence, it allows us to become aware of it. So yes, we're all creative. It's part of us. And then we can look at the problems and the situations that we're dealing with and are presented to us, knowing that we can bring the creativity into any situation. And that creative type of thinking is a way to develop some type of new or unorthodox solutions that do not really depend on whether it's past or current solutions. Something new comes across as long as we're aware of that.
Yes, so it's creativity is, there's another way of doing it, or there's a better way of doing, which is kind of ties into innovation. But we all become creative when we feel inspired. And we only can feel inspired where we surround ourselves with people that allows us to reach our potential or nurture us to our potential. But more importantly, creativity, if you've noticed, only happens when you have clarity of mind. When you don't have clarity of mind, you cannot be creative.
Right now at this point that we've covered the basics, to take a look at how we can creatively solve the problems and overcome challenges when we're afraid, angry, or extremely sad. From the scientific perspective or point of view, a healthy person's brain is designed in such a way that it allows us to protect ourselves from millions and millions of possible threats in life. And it could be the protection from being potentially hurt by someone or something psychologically or physically. In the protection mode, that actually takes place in a completely different part of your brain from the creative mode. When we feel threatened, the amygdala activates. The immediate instincts of fight, flight, freeze, and appease. Our brain ultimately and body locks down, and we're no longer open to influence or creative thinking. And our natural mechanism basically works to help us survive. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. And the amygdala activates, we are stuck in our point of view based on our beliefs that were built in between the time we're born until the age of 7. We are developing certain mechanisms to continue protecting ourselves from perceived beliefs based on those programs. And so it's good because you can run away from a serial killer that you potentially encounter in the dark alley, or if you're on a safari trip and there's a wild animal that's chasing after you. But in most cases, our fear and those threats are perceived. So the large amount of people are stuck living in that consistent fear, stimulated and triggered by the outside world. So creativity really happens in the prefrontal cortex. And once it is engaged, we're able to build societies, think innovatively, create better and harmonious relationships, explore new opportunities to do things differently, and ultimately even build trust. So what's your take on it?
Yeah, I totally agree with it. The fight or flight when you're stressed is either you fight or you flight, right? So that's how arguments happen. You perceive a threat, right? Whether it's threat to your identity, threat to your ego, threat to your routine, threat to your comfort level, then it kicks in. It naturally kicks in because the first thing of a organic being is for survival. That's our basics, you know. So when that kicks in, you either fight and argue, or you don't either avoid it. There's no in between, you know, and that doesn't. There's no creativity around that. Creativity is the opportunity to be able to take a 360 observation of everything, not 360 perception, because perception at the end still is emotive, right? Because I perceive it based on my memory, based on my judgment. So emotions will come up through the memory. You know, this event happened. I have associated with it. I've judged this event is similar to previous. So then with that memory, it kicks in. I don't like it, stress, I run or fight it. All right. But when we are relaxed or we have clarity, we are able to observe that situation so that there is a distance between our emotive self and our objective self. So by being able to see things objectively, we become creative, you know, and be able to connect the red threads. Red thread, what is that? It's like, you know, who would have thought Steve Jobs would go and look for the glass that DuPont, I think, created, and they shelved after 30 years of no one wanted to use it. This is a touch screen glass. You know? But he was able to put things together, and that's creativity. You know, and as we come up to problems or things that might look out of control, it's happening already. It will not change the situation if you do not accept it. It's not going to change the situation. It's, for example, you go and line up when we used to travel on planes. Um, when you line up, it's a long queue. What happens? We lose our entire sense of calm because the queue is long. The queue is long.
Mm.
So it's easier to calm yourself down to know that the queue is long and then do something else or put your mind to be more proactive elsewhere rather than waste all your energy thinking, why is it long? Is it the incompetence of the check-in agent, or is it that person is just don't know, blah, 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 blah. So creativity is that point of observing everything around you and become creative. So for example, if you're traveling in the group, the creative one will say, you guys wait here, I'll go a coffee run, or I'll go get something and come back. So immediately solutions come up if you are able to then just see the situation as it move on. So the creativity happens in all sorts of ways. It doesn't have to be problem solving, but since now the environment we're in, it's sort of like we seem to have come to a dead end. What do we do now? You know, and the more we focus on its dead end, the harder it is for us to pivot. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
Even by pivoting, you're still in the same spot. But if you've ever played basketball, pivot is like, oh my goodness, it's a skill you have to learn. So equally with being creative, it is a skill. Most of us, we can naturally walk, right? But then how good we are as runners needs to be coached, especially even for marathon runners. There's a professional coach that comes into. Similarly with creativity, it's how you direct your energy. And with any problems that we encounter, what is it that I can cobble together that allows me to leap beyond the barrier that I've come up against?
Where can a person start to unleash that creativity, especially right now when we are thinking dead end? What do we do now? Everything is done.
Learn how to breathe.
Mm.
I just finished a corporate course with with the Shangri-La group. Shangri-La is sort of like the Rosewood or Four Seasons hotel chain in Asia of that level. But with the lockdown, they have closed all their hotels in mainland China. That's several hundred hotels. And so they brought us in to give the colleagues in the lockdown an opportunity to stop, really just to stop. Even though you're locked down, your mind is to stop and just take it easy. And what I've noticed, it's the breathing. We don't know how to breathe. I mean, how many of us have watched the baby breathe? Right. And then when you start looking at the baby breathing, when they breathe in, the tummy comes out because the diaphragm goes in, so the tummy comes out, right? And then when you breathe out, the tummy comes in because the diaphragm goes out, right? So people are asking me, we can't draw the breath for so long. Breathing it in and exhaling it was also so long in the way you're giving that count. How the heck do you do it? And I said, I was exactly like you when I started, because I was just breathing from my chest out of vanity. I didn't want my tummy to come out.
Mm.
Then as I taught more and observed more, I started observing babies. And when you start looking at babies, the way they breathe, that's our original state. The tummy comes out. Now, why I'm saying creativity starts with breathing is I cannot be creative for the past. I can't breathe in the past either. It's already past. Nor can I be creative for the future. Like, hey, Tim, be creative now for 10 minutes time. It's literally like saying, breathe more now in 10 minutes. For 10 minutes time, you're going to be very busy. I can't. The breath is the only thing that happens in the present moment that you can influence. So just by focusing on your breath with your eyes closed very easily, not for a long time. I mean, don't go and think I'm going to do this for one day, or no, I'll do it for 1 hour. No, do small set, 5 minutes. 5 minutes is already a challenge, and you just focus on your breath. Close your eyes and breathe, and just observe it. How do you observe it? It's sort of like when you go to sleep and you can't sleep. That attention, you don't want that, because what happens when we sleep is that we just we give ourselves away. I don't know how we do that. I mean, we call it letting ourselves go. So that's where creativity happens, letting yourself go through the breath.
It sounds easy, but I know personally it's not, because when I first started my journey, I've struggled. I think it takes that commitment and desire and inspiration as to why you want to learn how to do this properly. And Tim, let's discuss a bit more about our techniques in our next part of this episode. For everybody watching us, go to part 2, and we will see you soon.